In Russia, the first-generation Infiniti FX crossovers of the S50 series are often called FX, but with respect, these spectacular and fast cars have been loved by Russians since the time when FX were brought from America only by gray dealers. Is it worth buying these cars now on the secondary market? And isn't it better to look for a white FX officially sold in Russia? The main thing, guys, is not to get old with anger. Both engines of the VQ series are good. The V6 on the FX35 version and the V8 on the FX45. A run of 350 to 400,000 kilometers is not the limit for them, and then liners and pistons can be replaced in light alloy cylinder blocks. Just do not forget where the oil dipstick is located. An oil consumption of 2 liters per 10,000 kilometers with an active driving style is common for the 6, and the V8 engine eats even more. The low oil pressure warning light that comes on only states that you have already hit the engine overhaul. It is also necessary to monitor the level of antifreeze. Leaking plastic tanks of cooling radiators after 4 to 5 years of Russian operation is a very common phenomenon, if not universal. Many workshops have even mastered the service of installing metal tanks in radiators. If you notice that the temperature starts to creep up in traffic jams, do not delay cleaning the clogged radiator cells. And if the aero starts to dance and it blows cold from the stove with a warm engine, it's better to go straight to the service. The risk of overheating with air locks in the cooling system is high, and the cost of subsequent repair of blockheads can go off scale for $3,000. In addition, even a slight overheating is guaranteed to warp the plastic valve covers of the engine, after which the oil that has leaked into the candle wells will begin to provoke misfires. Another culprit for the unstable operation of the motors is the throttle assembly that requires periodic cleaning, and if the engine does not start well and stalls after warming up, in 9 cases out of 10 the failed camshaft position sensor is to blame. But this is not fatal. The automatic 5-step Jatco, which died earlier than 200 to 250,000 kilometers, is a normal phenomenon only on cars that drove tail and main, and only its electronic brains are fooling around. Do not forget to change the oil in the box every 60,000 kilometers and make sure that there are no traces of antifreeze in it. The cooling circuits of the automatic transmission and the engine are adjacent in one radiator, the cases of internal depressurization of which are not isolated. Did you know that Infiniti FX come with rear-wheel drive only? Among the Americans with a V6 engine, these are found. But when buying, it is not necessary to count the number of cardans lying under the car. Just make sure that there is no plug in place of the button for the force blocking of the electromagnetic clutch. Since 2006, only all-wheel drive vehicles have been delivered to Russia through official dealers, but they don't have AWD lock mode, like the Americans. Instead of it, the snow button softens the reaction of the power unit. Regardless of the number of drive wheels, the transmission is reliable, but when the crosspieces are worn out, usually after 150 to 200,000 kilometers, it is better to rush to replace the universal joints, otherwise it will break the fit of the gearbox and transfer case flanges. Fans of too much gas will also face problems. On a slippery road, they significantly reduce the life of the electromagnetic clutch and front axle gearbox, and especially active drivers on 8-cylinder machines manage to break not only the splines of the wheel drives, but also the engine flywheel. For calm drivers, caring for the transmission usually comes down to changing the oil in the axle gearboxes and transfer case every 60,000 kilometers. The brakes, however, are rather weak. On overseas, FXs, brake discs, due to strong beating, require replacement almost more often than engine oil. Sometimes one intense braking is enough. For cars adapted for Russia, the Japanese increase the size of the brake calipers and the thickness of the discs, but they are not powerful either. FX with a range of 60 to 80,000 kilometers and native discs are rare. If you get tired of paying $270 for a pair of original discs again, put a perforated, non-original, for example, Stillen or Rot tuning brakes from one of the well-known companies, K-Sport, Brembo, AP Racing, Endless, StopTech, Proma, or Serial Ones. But the 2008 model, from the second generation FX, they do a better job. It cannot be attributed to the strong points of FX and the rather sharp 2.8 turns from lock to lock, rack and pinion steering mechanism, the backlash in which can appear after 70 to 80,000 kilometers. But if it is not accompanied by a leak of the working fluid, it is not necessary to rush to the store. For a start, you can limit yourself to adjustment. It is easy to confuse another with a knock in the rail, After 100,000 kilometers, it can be emitted by a broken steering shaft cross. Tie rods and wheel bearings last a little longer, the life of which is noticeably shortened not only by the number of collected holes, but also by low-profile 20-inch wheels. It is better to sacrifice appearance by installing thicker wheels with a landing diameter of 18 inches. Shock absorbers and aluminum McPherson front suspension arms are hardy and rarely complain about fate before 120 to 130,000 kilometers. The rear multi-link is even more patient, and the weak link in the rigid suspension of the Americans is inexpensive struts, $25 each, and stabilizer bushings, which are sometimes not enough for 20 to 30,000 kilometers. On Russian cars with the softer suspension setting, they withstand twice as much. Electrician? At FX, she is just an example of reliability. Of course, there are also spots in the sun. Fuel gauges are often screwed up from a young age, and after 6 or 7 years, the conductive pads of the sensor located in the gas tank are wiped. Because of this, you have to change a properly functioning fuel pump module. Then the tire pressure sensors begin to act up and the rear view cameras die. The owners of elderly Touareg and Disco can only envy such serious problems. But the interior of Infiniti let us down. Far from premium sounds, he surprises even on fresh cars, and over time, the colony of crickets only grows. To the voices of the finishing plastic and the tailgate, the creaking of the seats and tapping in the mechanism that lifts the steering wheel up when landing and disembarking are added. By the way, the chair also automatically moves off. Make sure that nothing interferes with the operation of its mechanism. Electric door lock drives freeze over time without outside help due to mechanical wear. Music, after several years of operation, often ceases to see discs or becomes completely numb due to poor contact in the wiring loop. And do not leave the car in the sun for a long time. From heating, the coating of the front panel may bubble. Total. And yet, the safety margin of the Infiniti FX, though not infinite, is considerable. You can buy an old Ficus from your hands. The main thing is that the previous owner should not confuse himself with the racer, and the car with the car. The best option in every sense is the officially sold FX with us, with the former Americans, who are easy to distinguish by a different stamping for the number in the fifth door and optics. They share the secondary market approximately equally. Versions with V8, up to 20% of offers, are more expensive in content and therefore cheaper faster. At the age of 3 to 5 years at a price of 1 to 1.5 million rubles, almost no different from the FX35. Profitable proposition. This amount is enough for a comfortable, but more relaxed and transportable Lexus RX. And classmates of BMW or Mercedes brands are much more expensive.